You're listening to Keith Engle, the host of TGI Sports Talk on the National Streaming Sports Roku channel.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engle here for National Streaming Sports, Jack and Keith's Weekend Playbook. And we always want to be transparent over here. We will tell you we're previously recording this, as you can see in the banner below. You'll see a couple of these shows in the next couple of weeks while I'm away. And we'll pick up live shows again. Once you've seen this, we'll pick up live shows again on the 21st, I believe, of November will be our next live show. So we apologize, but you can feel free to comment. And Jack and I will go back on some topics. Today we're going to wrap up some baseball business, talk about this past World Series a little bit more in depth, maybe where it ranks historically with some other series and maybe series games and some other topics in baseball. How are you, Jack? I want to welcome in Jack.
Really good, and I'm really excited about the topic in this show we're going to be doing, talking about baseball, because I don't feel we fully did the World Series justice for the simple reason it ended on a Saturday night. It ended dramatically, and the next day was the NFL show. You know, we had to talk about the NFL, wrap up college, and then we did Monday's show, and of course, we had to wrap up the NFL games. Not that we didn't talk about baseball, we did, but it deserves a full show, and it's getting it here.
That's fair. That's fair enough. And again, this thing deserves this series alone. We talked about it a little bit. I can only compare, I've read about World Series going back through time, but to really be fair, I have to compare World Series I've seen in my lifetime. And to me, the greatest one I've seen doesn't involve my team. 1975 Red Sox and Reds. I think this series compares favorably for the couple of great games. I think maybe Game 7 was a little anticlimactic in that series because of Game 6, but this one I think carried some of the same kind of moments throughout the different games. You can pick out a ton of different things. But Game 7 alone had everything. I guess you want to just make Game 7s. This might be the best Game 7.
Yeah, if you want to say Game 7 of this World Series was the greatest game of all time, you can make that claim. It certainly rates up there.
Yeah.
Okay. If you take the short list of greatest games in baseball history, this was one of them. But people are saying this was the best World Series ever. It wasn't, Keith. It wasn't.
Not this one. No. It's in the top 5.
No, I'm not sure the top 5. When you look at it, how many games were really close? Toronto dominated Game 1. LA dominated Game 2. So the first 2 games, it wasn't a classic. It was one game apiece. Each team dominated. Game 3, the 18-inning game, was an absolute classic.
100%.
Absolute classic. But guess what? Games 4 and 5, Toronto dominated. There was no doubt, on the outcome for the most part. And of course, Game 6 and 7 was dramatic. So out of the 7 games, you had 3 great games. You had 3 great games. 6th game was outstanding. Maybe not great, outstanding. Games 3 and 7 were all-time classics. But if you look at the series on a whole and compare it to the Reds and the Red Sox, okay, in 1975, I'm just throwing out one World Series. It doesn't make it better than that series. I hate to say it. It's just, this is the latest. This one is fresh in our minds. And even the 7th game of the Red Sox series, the Big Red Machine dramatically chipped away. They're down 3-0 in the 7th. 2-run homer by Tony Perez to make it 3-2. Then they tied it 3-3 in the 8th and got the go-ahead run 4-3 in the 9th to overtake the Red Sox. That was a great World Series. And the earlier games, for the most part, were close games on balance, unlike this series.
Don't you feel, and again, looking back at that one specifically, Game 7 felt anticlimactic the way it ended. It was a one-run game, and yes, the Reds came back, but everything that happened in Game 6, I just watched Game 6 again the other day. I had to watch it. It came up on my YouTube feed, and I said,
what are we talking about? Carlton Fisk's Homer?
Yeah. Game
Oh,
6
dramatic
Not-
stuff.
Yeah,
Red
we
Sox
remember
win that
we
one in
remember
extra innings.
we remember Fifth's home run in that game, though, but we forget about Evans' catch and throw. We forget about Bernie Carbo's home run. We forget about a lot of stuff in that Game 6. It's the best. Again, just talk about World Series in general. That's the best World Series game I've ever seen.
Well, and for pure baseball, Pete Rose said to the Red manager, Sparky Anderson, Sparky, isn't this so much fun? Like, in the late innings at the end, to be in a game like this. But Game 7, what we saw Saturday night, it doesn't get better than that.
It's really hard to
better
compare.
than that. I can't clearly put a game above that. I'm not sure it's that the greatest game I ever saw, because I just thought, in 1991 the Twins beat the Braves 1-0. That was
Jack Morris.
That was more of a tension-filled game in a sense than this one. But this one we saw last Saturday night, the Dodgers beating the Blue Jays. There were so many dramatic plays, and it left you on the edge of your seat. And you think of the heartbreak of the teams that lose games like this. It never goes away. In Toronto, as much as they accomplished this year, as great a year as they had, they can't use a line that I forgot one of the Red Sox players used in 1975. He says, hey, not bad for a team that was expected to finish, and so. But Keith, when you're so close to winning it all, so desperately close, I don't want to hear you exceeded expectations. It doesn't cut it for me in that point.
We talk about that a lot, that, perspective changes as you move along in a season. Before a season starts, X result would be good. If I finish 500, that'd be good. If I make the playoffs and I lose, that'd be good. That changes. The better you get, and the more successful you are.
And I kind of learned it a lot of years ago, college basketball. I got caught up in Seton Hall's run in the NCAA tournament under PJ Carlesimo. That was a great story.
100%.
I was so caught up, so excited. And then they lose to Michigan by 1 point. I come into work the next day, I'm so excited. What a great year Seton Hall had. Oh, they gave me so much entertainment, so much to be proud of what they did. And my coworker said it bluntly to the point, but they could have been NCAA champions. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Yeah. No matter how wonderful they were, it's the result that counts. And another story, I'm interviewing Tommy the Hitman Hearns. Okay, late in his career, after the second Sugar Ray Leonard fight, and I'm telling him, most people feel you won that fight. Even Sugar Ray Leonard said Tommy won the fight. I mean, I shouldn't have gotten the draw. Tommy won the fight. And I remember Tommy Hearns saying to me, I really appreciate Ray saying that. But the bottom line is, when we look at our records, you're going to see a draw. That's why I want to fight him again, because I didn't beat him. I don't care what people think. The result was a draw. And the cold result is what people are going to remember. And Keith, the Toronto Blue Jays, had they won that game, you better believe there'd be a 10th-year reunion, a 15-year, 20-year reunion of that championship team. They don't have reunions when you come up short.
Rarely, unless you only made a World Series once in your
existence
or something.
Unless it's so bad, the history of the franchise.
Well, in this series, that brings up a good point. It's tough for the Blue Jays to lose this. The Dodgers have won 2 in a row. Is that a bigger story than if the Blue Jays had won their first in 30 years and picked to finish last by a lot of people? And breaking up this team has been talked about for a couple of years. Would that have been a bigger story if they had won than the Dodgers repeating?
I think it would have been the biggest story would have been what went wrong with the Dodgers, why they didn't win the World Series. It seemed to be a formality at the beginning of the season. I mean, what exactly went wrong? I mean, their high payroll, and that's what we would have been talking about. But the Dodgers eked it out, and I'm not sure what to make out of the Dodger team next year. Some of their veteran players Are they going to be a little long in the tooth? Are they going to come back as strong as ever? They're obviously going to have a good team. They're too talented not to have a good team. But has the Dodgers lost their a little level of favoritism, much as the Kansas City Chiefs did? The Chiefs won 2 Super Bowls in a row. They came back for number 3, got to the Super Bowl. But were they exactly the same team? I'm not sure.
You know, it's funny. You make it there. So the Dodgers make it there. And we immediately say, if they don't win, we immediately say, well, that's it. That's the end of that dynasty. We don't know that. I mean, you know, again, we're talking baseball, but the Chiefs are a good example.
People want to put a cap on things, Keith.
Yeah.
Because they're saying the Dodgers are buying championships. I would be a hypocrite if I took that route being a Yankee fan. We used to hear that with George Steinbrenner. Oh, the Yankees could afford the money. They're buying titles, and people who want to take credit away from them. Look, it's an open market. There's some teams that can afford to keep up with the Dodgers money-wise. The Yankees are one of them. The Phillies are one of them. Toronto, ironically, you know, is one of them.
Red Sox are one, I think.
The Red Sox are one of them. And the Dodgers didn't have the best regular season. The Milwaukee Brewers, who the Dodgers swept in the playoffs, had a better regular season record. If the Dodgers won 118 games and ran away with things and totally dominated during the regular season and dominated in the playoffs, maybe I'd take a step back and I'd say maybe we got to reevaluate the situation. I'm not saying I would say that, but I would maybe consider it. But no, I don't want to hit. The Dodgers came within literally, Keith, within an inch or two of not repeating.
Yeah, several times they were close to not repeating. The fans were jumping up, including my good friend Danny Fuller was jumping off the bandwagon after Game 5. It was over. It was over. They can't hit. It's over. Well, we saw it.
I gave Toronto virtually no chance going in.
Danny, I got to give Danny credits, though. When we're talking about the money, he said a very important thing. Having the money gives you the ability to compete, I think, year after year, not necessarily win year after year. Because all those teams we mentioned, and you and I have seen a lot of this with the Yankees, they bought really bad teams with all that money sometimes, too. And not recently, but think about back to the 80s. Some of the, you know, he was investing money in players then, too. And spending more than anybody else.
Kobe Ellsbury, you know, they didn't pan out.
Bad teams. He invested in a lot of bad guys. And, you know, not to speak ill of the dead, I think this team has been better off when George has been missing from the scene. Suspended and now gone.
George would have gone the full route. You know, I kind of wonder. I never gave this any thought, Keith. I never gave this any thought at all. But I'm going to think about it the first time and ask you, if George Steinbrenner were alive and in the prime of his career, wheeling and dealing, I don't think now Juan Soto would have been a New York Met. I don't think Steinbrenner would have allowed it to happen. He would have gotten Scott Boras in the room and gone over $50 million a year if he had to. He would have paid $52 million a year. He would have made it so clear, you know, that in no way the Mets are outbidding me.
It's possible,
but the Mets necessarily outbid the Yankees. The Mets gave a token amount more. Not enough, I think, to be a game changer if Soto really wanted to be a Yankee.
You may be right, but George had one serious flaw that I noticed over and over again. He always loved other people's players more than his own, right? We saw Andy Pettitte leave. We saw Derek Jeter get, you know, told to go out and find a contract. Not all George, but Bernie Williams. Hold on. Bernie Williams almost becomes a Red Sox. I mean, there was a lot of instances where the Yankees don't always love, and I won't blame all George because some of it's Cashman too, loved other players, other teams' players more than their own. So maybe Soto wouldn't be there.
It depends on the case. Delayed this Jeter contract. Was Steinbrenner alive even for that? I don't think he was alive.
For Jeter, I feel like
no, not the latest one. He signed Jeter originally to a 10-year, $189 million deal. So he was high on Jeter then to sign him to that.
His last contract, he might have been gone. That's not
right. I think he had nothing to do with that. Yeah. Bernie Williams, I don't think George was completely 100% sold on Bernie Williams being a true star.
He'd been a star for years before then.
Well, he was caught in the middle, George.
Yeah.
And finally, George did give in, and the same thing I think with Mattingly. He eventually, gave in something. George gets it done at the end. The Andy Pettitte thing, the Yankees took too long on that. And part of the reason was Andy Pettitte reportedly had an elbow issue that concerned the Yankee medical staff. And the Yankees came in late in the game, the last moment. They offered him the same money he would have gotten from Houston. But Andy Pettitte, it got to the point where he was tired of them hemming and hawing.
Yeah.
And he had a chance to go home to Houston where he lived. And he was excited. And he went there for 3 years. But guess what? He came back to the Yankees. Worst move.
Love.
With Andy Pettitte, he made. And if I'm Andy Pettitte, I don't necessarily question myself. Had Andy Pettitte stayed with the Yankees, the 3 years he was with Houston, he would have been the winningest Yankee pitcher of all time. And that's what I think about with Pete Alonso with the Mets.
I think he's a Hall of Famer.
If you stay with the Mets and you're Pete Alonso, you're going to obliterate all the records. But what are the Mets going to offer Pete Alonso? That's the question. Alonso's not getting a 5-year deal. He's 31 years old. Last year, all the Mets would give him was a 2-year deal when all was said and done. Look, if Pete Alonso's willing to take $25 million a year, $100 million in total, the Mets will give him a 4-year deal. And you want to know something? If I'm Pete Alonso, I think to myself, if I can get $100 million from the Mets or $120 million for 4 years elsewhere, what do I do? Normally, I would tell someone, take the money. That's what I would normally do. And it's not about giving the team a discount, Keith. No. I would look at my legacy. If I'm here 4 more years, I'm going to obliterate these records. I'm going to go down as maybe the icon of icon in the record books in Met history. And to me, that would mean a lot.
I would think if I'm looked at as one of the best or the best player in a team's history, that's something to. I can't take money to the grave with me, but I can take a legacy.
He's the best player, but when you look at all the Met records, Alonso, you'd see, wow, that's awesome. He has the home run record right now, but he would put it out of reach. That's what I'm saying as a Met for home runs. He would put it out of reach for anyone else.
He would be one of the best players, which tells you a lot about the offensive history of the Mets. People haven't been here long enough to set big records, right? So,
yeah, and it depends. Look in the case of Vlad Guerrero. He signed 1 year. He was 1 year away from free agency. He said, "I don't need to get Juan Soto money. I'm not asking for that." He said, he wanted big money, but he held out. The Blue Jays didn't want to give it to him. He got $500 million for what? 14 years, something like $35 million a year. And when you look at it, it's crazy as it seems, he was kind of giving the Blue Jays a little bit of a hometown discount.
Yeah.
Because Vlad Guerrero's the type of player who you could see betting on himself, Keith. I'm going to go out and have a big year. And you want to know something? If Vlad Guerrero was a free agent, we wouldn't even be talking about Pete Alonso remaining as a Met. You want to know why? Because the Mets would have bid big time on Guerrero. I mean, Alonso would have been gone, basically.
Yeah. Well, the Yankees and Mets, even though Vlad said he'd never play for the Yankees, I guarantee you when the money started rolling in, he'd consider it. That would be a huge betting war.
Why did he say that? I don't get it.
I think it had to do with some of the fans and some things that happened during games. Again, he didn't like Yankee fans and things people said about him and whatever.
I could understand Ken Griffey Jr. because when he was a kid,
the
way he seemed to be treated in the clubhouse when his dad played for the Yankees, and maybe his dad didn't have a good experience.
They kicked him out. They kicked him out of the clubhouse. They didn't want the kids in the clubhouse. Griffey'd always brought his kids to the clubhouse.
I'm going to tell you, I don't think anything is necessarily wrong with that, Keith. I mean, I have mixed feelings. There was one player, I forgot his name, on the White Sox. He was making $12 million a year. This was a number of years back. Not that long, maybe 8 years ago or something like that. but the White Sox weren't playing up to their potential, whatever. And the GM banned the kids from being on the field for practice, participation.
Punish the kids.
No. Wasn't petty, but look at any other job, Keith. Look at your job, what you did for career. And let's say your kid was hanging around the office a lot, and you had a big boss. He might say, Keith, we got to get down to work. I can't have your kid, hanging around here playing on his tablet or whatever.
It's fair.
I mean, you have to understand it's the workplace at the end. And that player who was making $12 million a year retired. So who did he spite? I mean, the team is probably glad they got out from under the contract.
Probably. And that, I think that was one of George's edicts as well, by the way, the Griffey thing. By the way, before we wrap up the George part here, one thing I will tell you that if George were here,
George up, talking generically, I didn't know all this was linked to George Steinbrenner.
No. George, before we go away from him for good, well, we'll never go away from George for good. One thing I can tell you, if he was alive today and in his prime, two guys that would not be on this part of this team anymore would be Brian Cashman and Aaron Boone. There's no way they survive all this amount of time without a World Series. Never.
The George of the early years, not the George of the later years. I agree with you, because keep this in mind. The Yankees blew a 3-0 lead to the Red Sox in the 2004 playoffs. George was still the owner, and Joe Torre survived the comeback.
They weren't that far away from 4 out of 5 winnings, though.
The George of the 70s and 80s would have fired Torre. Of course, he would have rehired him later on at some point. Torre would have been back. But George kept making moves. He kept shaking things up. I remember Sparky Lyle in his book, The Bronx Zoo, said George, fired a secretary for not bringing him a tuna fish sandwich quick enough. But George did have a heart of gold despite his impulse. Then there was a story, he fired someone and he felt so guilty about it. He got the information about her son going to college and he paid for the tuition. I mean, that was George. I mean,
there's also a story about George when he hired Torre. It wasn't more than a day or two. He thought he'd made a mistake and went back trying to get Buck to come back.
Yeah, that was George. I mean, he was very impulsive, and the thing with Billy Martin is unheard of. He kind of ran it like a company, a dysfunctional company, like get me another secretary, get me another this, get me another that. But George felt players thrived best under intimidation, pressure. They had to get the job done, and he wasn't necessarily wrong. I don't like to hear players say, we don't feel any pressure. Well, if it's a big game, a big situation, you got to embrace the pressure. I don't want a player in a big spot coming up relaxed. I want him to understand the moment. You've got to come through. This is crunch time. That's what's known as coming through in the clutch.
Well, you know what? Talking about circling back to great World Series teams, 77, 78, those guys could play under any kind of, because there was so much crap going on here in 77, 78. And the Yankees did seem to thrive under that type of pressure and stress and just chaos. I guess chaos might be a better word. Both 77 and 78 were loaded with that type of thing, and those players responded.
Well, they did as far as winning the World Series, but I'm going to tell you, Reggie Jackson was on a very dysfunctional team with the Oakland A's, who won 3 championships in a row, 72, 73, 74. Then the Yankees, 77, 78. I remember the 1977 season when there was such turmoil. I went in the summer to a Yankee-Texas Ranger game, and Bucky Dent made 2 phenomenal plays in the field. I'm watching him go back to the dugout, Keith. No one's patting him on the back. It's like just business like usual, like people are waiting to catch a train. And I'm looking like there wasn't that team spirit. Hey, nice job, Bucky. Today, we would see the pitcher clap. He'd get patted on the back on the way to the dugout. They would greet him on the way to the dugout. It was like kind of nothing.
I feel like that was a unique group of guys that just, they're all out there doing their job individually. And, it worked for those couple of years. And
Well, I remember John Sterling. He said when he had a talk show on radio in 1976. And by the way, I love John Sterling as a radio broadcaster. I thought, to me, my particular taste, he was phenomenal. He made me enjoy listening to his work with the Yankees. But I'm going to tell you, John Sterling was the worst talk show host I ever heard. Rude, obnoxious, a rear end kisser.
I'm not shocked.
I could not stand John Sterling, when he had his talk show. Okay,
I never heard him.
As a Yankee radio broadcaster, to me, he was great. I'd hear people criticize him all the time. Even though I didn't like John Sterling, I loved listening to him do the Yankee broadcast.
I think John Sterling was a good baseball TV broadcaster. When he was with the Braves, I used to get to Superstation. I watched Braves games. I thought he did a really good job. When he came to the Yankees and did radio, he was still calling TV games. Like, we're supposed to know what's going on. He's supposed to tell us. Line drive home runs, big towering home runs were line drives.
Well, Sterling wasn't a Yankee broadcaster yet in 76, but he was angling to get the job. Every call he would take would be to make the superiors happy. The people who could help him happy. He wasn't a talk show host with integrity, as far as I'm concerned when he did it. But that was so long ago, and I'm still annoyed at him for how he did the talk show. Isn't that crazy? 50 years ago, and I'm still holding it against the poor guy.
Well, I hold a grudge that long.
He deserved it with the job he did back then. But great radio announcer. But he said on one of the shows something that always stuck with me. Baseball is a selfish game, unlike a lot of other sports. You might think, a team's going to quit. When the Yankees were down 3-0 to the Reds, he says every batter wants to get a hit. Every pitcher wants to get people out. Now, maybe they're not going to play small ball as far as stealing a base. Maybe they're not going to be motivated to dive for balls and do the little extra. But if the pitcher pitches well, and the ball is hit to the fielders, they're going to be, fielders are going to try to catch everything and get everyone out. And pitchers are going to try to get everything out. And every batter is going to try to get on base. So I'm not sure whether a team necessarily quits in baseball. Even if they do quit, they can still win, without being particularly motivated about the team.
That's a fair statement.
You can't do that in basketball because you got to play, certain defense, football, hockey. It's different.
There's got to be some cohesion. Look, we've talked about two teams that were the most dysfunctional I can remember in the 70s A's and the 70s Yankees, and they found ways to win. So that tells you don't have to be a cohesive unit to win in Major League Baseball the way you do in the NFL. Do you think a team like the A's or the Yankees would have ever won in the NFL with that type of personalities just constantly at each other day after day?
I'm thinking I can't recall a team that didn't patch up their descent in the NFL. I just can't. I can recall it in basketball. I'm reading a really good book right now that was out a few years ago, written by Jeff Pearlman. On the Lakers, the dissension, what went on with Kobe and Shaq. They still won, but you want to know something? Example. They did not do as well as they could. They lost one finals to the Detroit Pistons, where there was no harmony on that Laker team. Shaq and Kobe were totally on different pages, and they played disgracefully in the finals.
Is that a testament of Phil Jackson and how good he is? Or was?
I think the best, Phil Jackson, first off, he's not my cup of tea, as a person, how he is.
Difficult.
Difficult. A condescending guy, his nose up in the air. He walks around, you get the impression he feels he's better than you are. But with that said, he handled players well, give him credit. And the best job Phil Jackson ever did, when you think of it, when Michael Jordan left the Bulls to play baseball, the first year he was out, complete season, they went 55-27 in the regular season without Michael Jordan. Yeah. Now, imagine any other team losing their mega star and playing that well, it kind of lets you know Phil Jackson played a large role in it. And look, he had an excellent relationship with Michael Jordan. Supposedly, he had a good relationship with Shaq. He kind of knew how to handle people, but he was a bit of. But I don't like the way Jerry West's tenure ended with the Lakers. You know, it's funny. This is a baseball
It's
show.
okay. We're good.
I don't mean to get totally off base, but no one was in the history of the LA Lakers. Was there ever more of a pure Laker than Jerry West?
No.
Pure Laker. I mean, you could talk Magic, spend his whole career there. Kobe spent his whole career there. But something about Jerry West, he was like Mr. Laker. And Jerry West was one of the great GMs in NBA history. When you think of it, as great a player as he was on the court, what a debate question. What was Jerry West bet as? A player or as a GM? You could,
awesome.
and just the idea, we could compare him to how he was as a player and how good he was as a player. John Sally was asked to name his top 5 starting team. And John Sally named Jerry West, and that blew you away. But the big Oscar Robertson was better than Jerry West, great as West was.
Well, logo. He's the logo for a reason. He was a great player and a great ambassador for the game, I think, too. But Robertson was great. Let's circle back to some baseball and get back to the World Series a little bit. I thought about this a lot in the last couple of days. We talk about great series, great games. I'm sorry. Great games. What are the 3 games? They don't have to be the winning team. What are the 3 best moments, not even games, moments in the World Series for you? I got 3 very specific ones. 2 of them involve my team. One is a negative play, but I will give you that much. I have 3 specific moments that stick out for me. And again, this is in my lifetime, right? I'm not going back to 1920 when I'm only reading about it. I need to have seen it.
We're not counting the last game.
You can count any. You can count any game.
You know, okay.
One moment though. One moment that stands out.
I'm going to tell you, I was at the 6th game of the World Series, or I was at every Yankee home game in 1977 when they won the World Series. I'm going to tell you what kind of sticks out of my mind. Not what happened on the field, okay? But what happened off the field. The Yankees had hit a bad patch after their dynasty. Their last World Series was 1964 that they won, but they didn't win it in 63, 64. So I was there for the bad, developing into a big fan during all those bad years.
You and me both.
And then they won in 77. And I remember the game is over. Okay, the Yankees celebrated on the field, the whole thing, people are heading out. And I'm just looking at the scoreboard in the stadium, 1977 World Series champions, New York Yankees, and just standing there staring. Now, that was a moment. It wasn't a moment watching a player do something on the field, but the reality, man, like all my childhood, I didn't get this. I went through a tough childhood as a Yankee fan, as a baseball fan. It was a rough childhood to be a fan. And here they are. I'm a young adult, and I'm now watching. It was a reality.
I will. And again, I will expand it. So a moment could be like a performance for a player too. So again, it could be an individual performance by a player as well.
And I'm going to tell you, giving a hint of how old I was, and this is going to impress you.
You already told me you caught Bobby Thompson's home run. I know how.
No. This is going to impress you, and this is a true story too. Okay. When I first became old enough to remember anything in baseball, I was, a little kid. But during that time in 1962, kids were allowed to go out to the store all alone, not like now in society.
Yeah.
And I went to this after school center and I rushed home with my friends because the Yankees were playing the Giants in the 7th game of the World Series, Keith. We went to my house. we put the TV on, and we get there just in time to watch Bobby Richardson catch Willie McCovey's line drive, the 1-0 Yankee, World Series. And I have a recollection of that rushing, and I hadn't gone through any pain, but the excitement. Oh, the Yankees win. They're the champions. On the line drive. And another one that I kind of remember that sticks out, and I mentioned 1991 with Jack Morris. He pointing to home plate for the winning run to score, and he struck me, Jack Morris. The word warrior is overused, but he was such a darn warrior that game. He laid it all on the line. He's pointing, touched the darn plate. This guy he went 10 innings. This guy was not going to come out. He was going to go 15, 16 innings if need be. And Tom Kelly, his manager, had the biggest problem possible. He was not, because Morris was not going to leave the game no matter what. And he was going to, and if the game was going to continue like that 18-inning marathon we had in this World Series, at some point Morris was going to have to go out. He wasn't going to go 18 innings.
I don't think so.
But I could just see in the 13th inning, Morris and Kelly arguing, and Morris getting in Kelly's face after 13 innings. You're not taking me out of nothing. And what's Kelly to do when you have a guy with that attitude who's never given you attitude before? Yep. What do you do? The Yankees had that situation, Keith, 2003 playoff game to see who'd go to the World Series. Mo Rivera pitched 3 innings. Torrey was saying to Don Zimmer, I got to take him out. And Zimmer was saying, no, leave him in. In a situation like that, you don't worry about injuries, arms, as long as the guy can throw well. I would have kept Mo in 6-7 innings. I'm riding him. Mo is better than anyone you're going to bring in after him. I don't want to hear you got to save his arm. I mean, at that
bad
point,
Mo.
Everything is thrown out the window. The rules that you normally have as far as players and what you do.
I've got 3 that, again, maybe most people would not agree with me, but one's a little bit of a cheat. It's not necessarily a moment; it's a performance. Game 3, 1978, Yankees got knocked around, down 2-0. They're back in. I think the game was in New York. Guidry's getting hit all over the place, walking the ballpark, and Greg Nettles makes 5 of the most outstanding plays I've ever seen in my life. 5 runs. I think it was 4 great plays, but that to me, that was my single. That's the best game performance I've ever watched. Who did nothing with his bat, right? We talked the other day about, bats make the difference. Yeah, they do. But guess what? Gloves do too. Greg Nettles, I think, single-handedly saved that 1978 series for the Yankees. That's my number 1 moment. Number 2, you talked about this game a lot. And it's been talked about, obviously, throughout history. Game 6, 1975. People remember Carlton's Fisk. I have to tell you, the moment that resonates with me more than any is they're down 6-3 in the bottom of the 8th, and they're thinking the Red Sox think they're dead. And Bernie Carbo, I watched this again yesterday. Bernie Carbo takes the worst swing on a 2-strike pitch in the history of baseball. And everybody in that dugout thought the same thing. What the hell was that? He barely, at the last second, got his bat on a ball and just followed it to his feet. Worst swing I ever seen a major leaguer take. And the next pitch, he just absolutely creams the ball into the center field bleachers. That was a great moment. People forget about it because of the Fisk home run. Yeah,
they remember the Fisk homer, but the Carbo homer was actually a bigger homer.
Oh, without it, there is no Fisk home run, right?
If the Red Sox don't score, it's still tied up. It's in extra innings. We don't know what will happen. Yeah,
that's a great moment, and for a guy who had a troubled career too, by the way. And the third moment is pretty much lost, I think, in history for the most part. But it got rekindled in my mind the other day. One of the baseball groups said, "What's the first thing you think about when you think about Bob Welch, the guy puts out these questions about players all the time. What's the first thing you think about? Think about this guy. And he mentioned Bob Welch just the other day. And it popped in my head. Reggie. The duel that Bob Welch had with Reggie, I want to say in game 3 or 4 in 1978.
It was game 2.
It was game 2. I got right, game 2. End of the game. It was the last out of the game, and he's just throwing smoke. And Reggie's, it was a great at bat. Reggie got even with him later in that series. But I remember that matchup.
Yeah.
I could just vision that matchup in my head as soon as I heard Bob Welch. I went right to the strikeout for Bob Welch. And again, I know Reggie got even with him later, but that was a great.
But Greg Nettles also, it's easy to forget, in game 4, Nettles made a great play at the start of the game. You know, people forget about that extra play Nettles made. Lasorda was beside himself, like, here we go again.
That's another great moment.
You know, with Greg Nettles, it kind of has to bother 390 career homers. One of the greatest gloves in the history of baseball, you know, for third baseman. Certainly Greg Nettles has a top 5 glove. If we're going to do gold, silver, and bronze, the best defensive third baseman, I could start off with Brooks Robinson, gold, Greg Nettles, silver, and now let's start discussing bronze. And you have 390 homers, and you've won championship teams, and he doesn't even have a monument out at Yankee Stadium. Let's forget the Hall of Fame for a second. The Yankee organization is pathetic not to have Greg Nettles in Monument Park. Monument Park is a joke. You know, in that sense. They have Tino Martinez out there, but not Greg Nettles. They retired Paul O'Neill's number, but Greg Nettles can't be a Monument Park. Same with Roy White, 15-year Yankee.
They're two great examples.
Guys, Nettles and White in Monument Park. Who are these idiots who are making the decision?
It's atrocious that they would make those decisions. And you know,
hold that against Brian Cashman. If you're going to hold something against Brian Cashman,
I'll hold that against him.
He has no respect for the championship teams that, you know, in the 1970s. No respect at all, because he wasn't around for that. But
guys who kept them relevant, by the way. Roy White and Bobby Mercer, guys like that, kept that team relevant when they were really bad. When I was a kid, they stunk.
Well, Mercer is questionable whether he should have a spot out there.
I'm just using his name. I'm not saying he necessarily belongs.
No, but it's debatable. We could.
And he's my guy. He's my guy.
No, I'm not saying yes and no. I would be willing to sit down and study a situation with Bobby Mercer, whether he should or shouldn't. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. But Greg Nettles and Roy White are automatics. Absolute automatics. And I'm going to tell you, as much as I love Brett Gardner, a 14-year Yankee, if he gets a spot in Monument Park ahead of Roy White, they're very comparable in a sense. But Roy White was the better player. There would be something off there. But Greg Nettles, how the heck is he not, out there in Monument Park?
I'm a big Nettles guy. I love Nettles. Mercer was my guy growing up, but Greg Nettles was one of my favorites, especially when he as we got into those championship years. But I'll bring up some guys that are in the Hall of Fame. Yes, he deserves his monument.
You surprised me a little. I would have guessed Joe Pepitone. That was your type of guy.
Well, I was that kind of guy. No, not Pepitone. Pepitone was a little before my.
Pepe was fun. Pepe made the Yankees fun.
Yeah, he was a little before at 68. He was gone by 68. That's when I really started to become cognizant of the Yankees. But Nettles, I talk about Nettles belonging in a Hall of Fame just because of his glove. And guys will say, well, he only won 2 gold gloves. And I'm like, but he had to. Brooks Robinson was still getting gold gloves probably when he didn't deserve them anymore late in his career. And there were some other great third basemen at that time as well. Buddy Bell was great in the 70s.
He wasn't better than Nettles.
No, he wasn't. No. But he won a couple of gold gloves. Guys were winning for their bats at the time. And
you make me think that statistic. I mean, it's so unfair. Jim Jeffcoat, who used to do the podcast with us, who played for the Dallas Cowboys, his name came up once as far as a possible Hall of Fame inductee. And he says, those Pro Bowl teams, even though it might seem like a farce at times, they influence the voters. You look immediately, and I'm guilty of this myself. I look, the guy made 8 Pro Bowls. He must be, Hall of Fame worthy, perhaps. I got to look at his thing carefully. And if I see a guy make no Pro Bowl teams, no All-Star teams, we might dismiss him without really looking as carefully at him as we should.
Yeah. It's funny. The Hall of Fame is so subjective. I mean, real quick, we'll talk, since we're talking about the Hall of Fame, I'm going to pivot to, we just had the announcement this week of the guys who are going to be considered by the Contemporary Committee. We change the name of this committee like every year. So,
well, I'm telling you why. Donald Trump questioned Roger Clemens not being in it. So to keep Clemens eligible and relevant and alive to get it, Rob Manfred, I'm sure, had a lot of influence, to kind of change the rules, bring these guys back, let them be eligible again. So they're eligible. So Clemens got a shot. So
they were never ineligible except for Pete Rose. These guys were all eligible and were voted.
I know, but they're within range, Keith. They got something like Bonds and Clemens, about 65% of the vote. Meaning that they're not that far away. That's the point.
I'm not sure if they ever got that high. Maybe in the 50s.
I think at the end they got in the 60s.
Maybe you're right. Listen. I understand why people don't want them there, but you can't have a Hall of Fame to me without Barry Bonds was a Hall of Famer before he ever, his head got 2 sizes larger than it was. Before he started using steroids, he obviously used them. He can say whatever he wants. Clemens used them, but I say you put these guys in there, but you tell the story, warts and all. They use baseball.
But in the case of Clemens, I mean, with the public in general and the media is certain that Clemens, was involved with steroids.
And
but technically speaking, he was never found to take it, technically speaking, and claimed his innocence and fought back against it. So I'm not going to say I feel he was innocent of the charges against him, but it's big time suspicion against him. And in the case of Bonds, he says he never knowingly took it.
He's wrong. He's a liar too.
I would love one player to step forward and say, yeah, I took it. I knew it was going to give me an edge. But players are cheating all the time in baseball. They're trying to steal signs. They're trying to do this. They're trying to do that. And he admits it. At the time, you tell me, I'm not sure. At the time Mark McGwire was hitting the homers with Sosa, was steroids illegal? Did they do anything illegal?
No, baseball turned the other way. I mean, there was interviews.
No. But did they do anything illegal? I mean, did they break any law? Actually, I'm not talking about morality.
I do believe that there was a ban on performance enhancing drugs and the creatine and the other things that they were taking at the time, and it's different stuff in different time periods, right? I mean, it was right there in his locker when he was doing interviews, for crying out loud. You could see it there.
Yeah, was it over the counter stuff? If it was, then they did nothing wrong in reality.
No, and again, I think
over the counter, they should be allowed to take anything they can get over the counter.
Well, again, that was the thing, right? And then they changed the rules to cover a lot of other stuff, and then guys were getting in trouble for taking stuff because they didn't, they're taking stuff for whatever, and they didn't know this substance was in the drug they took, and they get banned for that too. Listen, I have no doubt these guys cheated, if you want, whatever word you want to use, to get ahead. And Barry Bonds did it. Barry Bonds did it because he was jealous of Sosa and McGwire. That's documented as well in the book that was written about him. He has never admitted it, but he did.
Well, he never knowingly. He didn't knowingly take it. Yeah, sure, Barry. I believe you.
Weren't you curious when your head started to grow like 7 sizes, for crying out loud? Anyway, I think they belong in the Hall of Fame though, because again, you still need some talent. You can take all the drugs you want. You can give me all the steroids you want. I'm not going to be a Hall of Fame baseball player.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they belong. I really do. They're not all
And
going to get
also,
in.
the number of players who are in the Hall of Fame right now, who were under a lot of suspicion whether they, took it or not. And one player in particular, his while he was playing, his physique went downhill by a lot
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
on. So I'm not going to mention names, but I get the feeling he thought, wow, I'm scared of getting caught. I'm going clean, even if it affects my performance now. I'm
Yeah.
worried about my reputation. And that player, later got inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Well, I'll tell you what. Many guys. I think I know who you're talking about, by the way.
I'm not gonna. We can't mention his name. I
Well, I
mean,
can't mention his name, but I
no,
will.
no, no.
If
I'm
it's your
not.
name, I'm not gonna.
I'm not gonna. There are laws, so on, and I'm just not gonna go there with that.
You know
I
how
mean,
many people
certain
have
guys
lined on my
were
show?
very public. The guys were not in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
We can talk openly about their situation because obviously,
Why would it be any different?
if Clemens, Bonds, A-Rod weren't under suspicion, they would be in the Hall of Fame without question.
What about the guys that are there that you have to use examples? I'll use Big Papi as an example. He's in the Hall of Fame. He was under plenty of suspicion, as much as Clemens, as much as Pettit, as much as Bonds. But
Well, Pettit
he got a ride in.
reportedly, Pettit used it, he says, over a period of a few days. Do I
Well, Pettit-
believe him?
Pettit's
Somehow
probably a
I-
different story. Do I think he used it by mistake? No.
No,
these guys just said he used it by mistake.
Over a few days. I would disregard that. If someone, used it short term, they had a thing to experiment. It's like someone who never smoked marijuana one time. Okay, I'm going to try how it is one time. They have a joint and that's it. I'm not going to implicate them as,
That's different.
marijuana.
I get that, but some of these guys, like Barry Bonds, who say, "Oh, well, I never knowingly took it." Rafael Palmeiro says, "I was letting this guy shoot stuff in my butt, but I didn't know what it was. I thought it was B12." Really?
You know what, Palmeiro? His case, in a sense, to me, is a little more controversial than the other guys. Okay, Palmeiro took it fair enough, but when you look at his numbers, the votes he gets compared to the other great players like Bonds and Clemens, it's minuscule. Yeah. Now, if Palmeiro never took it per se, was never under suspicion, he'd be in the Hall of Fame by now. He'd be in the Hall of Fame. His vote total, even with the steroid issue, should be much higher. But I think people are ticked off because he kind of wagged his finger, and made it clear. You don't wag your finger. It got Bill Clinton in trouble, so on. You don't wag your finger, Keith. You could deny things, but don't wag. Look at me, Keith.
Jeez, I think I've done that. I think I've done that.
Or if I'm talking like this and then I'm saying the same thing, you could forgive me soon if I'm like this rather than like this.
Agreed. Listen, Palmeiro, here's the difference between Palmeiro, Bonds, Clemens. I'll just use those two guys for now. Those two guys were Hall of Famers before the suspicions, before they took steroids, most likely. Rafael Palmeiro likely would have only gotten considered because he used steroids. That's when his numbers really jumped, and along with some other players that I don't think deserve consideration. But let's just look at this ballot quickly. Do they belong in? And we'll start with Bonds and Clemens. Funny, they get on the ballot.
Easily they belong in. I'm talking about on merit as a player. That's all I'm talking about.
Carlos Delgado. Excuse me.
No.
I say no. He's a lot like Fred McGriff. I don't think Fred McGriff belongs in Hall of Fame.
You'd have to show me Delgado statistics to make an argument. I'm willing to listen, but the answer would be no. I don't think he'd sway me.
473 home runs. I don't have the rest of them in front of me here. I should have brought them up, but
no.
No MVP. He was an MVP. No MVPs. No World Series. No nothing. Right? I mean, no.
No, he was a heck of a player, but he's not quite a Hall of Famer to me.
This one's an interesting case. Jeff Kent.
Yes.
I think so too.
I mean, if you look at the cold numbers, he hit 290. I think he has more homers than any other second baseman in Major League history, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And he's good, very good defensively. Was a four-storm MVP. Yeah, Jeff Kent would actually get my vote. Yeah.
You think is this a guy whose personality gets in his way? You think?
Maybe, but listen, Jeff Kent is not a slam dunk Hall of Famer. Certain guys, Bonds Clemens, are slam dunk Hall of Famers. A-Rod, slam dunk Hall of Famer. Kent gets, he gets in, barely gets in. He gets onto the bus right as the door's closing, but he gets in.
Here's a guy. I'm going to leave this guy for last. Dale Murphy. Oh, I love Dale Murphy. Back-to-back MVPs. When you look at the total body of work, though, it looks a little weak, right? But two back-to-back MVPs make me. At one time, he was the best player in the game.
I like to do things by the naked eye, Keith. Because I lived through the time when a player plays.
Yeah,
he was a truly great player. He was a superstar type player to me. I would vote for Dale Murphy. I would, if we're sitting in a room, but you would have to talk me out of voting for him, go over his whole career, and I'd have to be told why he shouldn't be and not why he should, because he would get he's not slam dunk, but he would get my vote.
Yeah, he would get mine too. Gary Sheffield.
That's an interesting one. Miserable personality.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't like, abrasive personality, not the most likable guy, but he was an RBI machine. I mean, he had 504 career home runs. He had a great arm, but he never seemed to throw anyone out, defensively.
He
looked good as having a cannon of an arm. But he was adequate in the outfield. He wasn't a liability. He never hurt the team defensively. He just got the feeling he didn't help as much as he could. I don't think he ever won a Gold Glove, did he?
I don't believe so. He did have 30 home runs and 100 RBIs 8 times.
And at one point he said he was better than Aaron Judge. Well, I have news for you, Gary. Judge was clearly a better player than you, and no offense to you, but it's a no-brainer. If I have a choice, you are Aaron Judge. But with that said, I think Chef, he's barely sneaks in too.
500 home runs with no steroid allegations that I'm aware of. With
there were steroid allegations. Well, but no.
Not over the top.
Steroid allegations. That's why Chef hadn't gotten the vote.
Well, maybe so.
Because of the allegation. When I say allegations, I don't mean someone outright accused them. Steroid suspicion with Sheffield. That's the reason he hasn't gotten the vote total that he should have really, gotten.
I'm putting him in. Fernando.
I would have him in. I would vote for Chef. Yeah.
Fernando.
But no, not Fernando. No, he created a tremendous buzz. We're going to put him in. Let's put in Mark the Bird Bidrich, who created a tremendous buzz. Let's put in Vida Blue, who created tremendous buzz. Fernando was a heck of a good pitcher, just, charismatic. If charisma counts for, if we want to give charisma extra weight, then put Fernando in. But no, he's not a Hall of Famer.
He did win a Cy Young, and he did finish. He had 4 top 5 finishes for Cy Young and Gold Glove. I'm going to say no, though. Lastly, this one is always going to create debate, and to me, it's a no-brainer because he was the best player in baseball for a long enough period of time. Don Mattingly has got to be in the Hall of Fame. If Kirby Puckett's in the Hall of Fame, his numbers are very close to Mattingly's.
Yeah, Mattingly should be in the Hall of Fame. Then look at his numbers at the end. Consider this: the guy won 9 Golden Gloves.
Yeah.
So, if you're going to tell me defense is very important, the guy won 9 Golden Gloves, and if I'm to name the top 5 defensive first basemen of all time in the history of baseball, and I decide I'm putting Don Mattingly in the top 5, I dare someone to argue with me. Oh, no, Donnie's not. We'll sit down and look at his, highlights, his films, so on. Donnie Mattingly deserves to get in based on peak value, because for at least a couple of years, he was the best player in baseball. Flat out the best player in baseball. Just like they're arguing now. Who's the best player in baseball? Is it Ohtani? Is it Judge? Well, for a couple of years, it was Don Mattingly, best player in baseball. And Donnie, I think, belongs in. But if you're going to look at body of work, you know, he had issues late in his career. He wasn't on the Yankees when they won a World Series. I can understand people who don't vote for Don Mattingly. He's not a slam dunk Hall of Famer, but I feel he is based on peak value, what he was during his peak.
One World Series appearance would have changed all this, I think. I really do. I don't even think you need to win.
Appearance? No, and I'm in for body. Listen, I'm in for body of work counts for something to me. Don Mattingly would get in as a player, but he had some success in a post-managerial coach career. He was with the Dodgers when they went to the playoffs for 3 years. He was manager of the year in the National League with the Miami Marlins, and he did a good job apparently as a bench coach with the Blue Jays who got in this year. He's a real baseball lifer. He's been in the game so long, but you can only put him in one category. And obviously, you're not going to put him in a non-participant category. You know,
again, the problem with the overall body of work is sometimes we put too much emphasis on the compilation of numbers, right? Carl Yastrzemski played 24 years, for crying out loud, to put up the numbers he put up.
If Yastrzemski was a great player.
I love Yastrzemski. I'm not knocking Yastrzemski. I'm really not. But if Donnie played 24 seasons, his numbers would be as good as Yastrzemski.
Oh, yeah, but that's anything. That's the debate we hear LeBron with Jordan. LeBron's breaking every record. He's going to dwarf Jordan. But Jordan at peak value versus LeBron at peak value. Most people give Jordan the edge if the two of them are at the very top of their game. I mean, they're both. LeBron's obviously super great at the top of his game. He's like a Superman too. But people give Jordan a little edge and peak value. But career-wise, who's had the greater career? LeBron's had the greater career, actually.
Fair. That's fair. I think both. My point is, I think you can consider both, right? If a career was short because of whatever reason, Thurman, it's another argument for another day. Don Mattingly, because of injuries, but during that 12-year span you played, 6 of those seasons you were among or at the top of the game, the game's best players, and that's got to count for something. It's got to count.
Don Mattingly was so great. When it came down to the batting title between him and Wade Boggs, last game of the season, Mattingly was in the situation where he'd have to get 6 hits in a row because Boggs decided to cowardly sit the game out to protect the title. You know, Boggs wasn't the greatest character guy, but he was a Yankee for 5 years. He was a good Yankee to 5 years. He didn't cause
a World Series
extension. But Don Mattingly was saying, I'll be up there taking my hats. Like he thought he could actually get 6 hits in a row. You know, you kind of wonder players protecting a batting title. I remember with Ken Griffey Jr., the Reds met with him, Sparky Anderson, other players, because he was leading Bill Madlock of the Chicago Cubs for the batting title, and Griffey sat out the game. And Madlock went 4 for 4 and stole the batting title. And because they figured he's not going to go 4 for 4, but Madlock did it.
There's one great example of the way to do this. I know you probably agree with me. Ted Williams played a doubleheader, I think, and went like 5 for 7 or something. And one,
yeah. Well, I got 5 to 8.
That was when he was hitting 400. That was the protect. He sat out protected 400.
I think on reflection, it was Ted Williams had to make the move, even though he didn't know it at the time. He would have been credited with hitting 400, but a controversy would have enveloped later on. We would have been talking about to this day, because Ted Williams' actual average was something like 399.8. And I'm sure that would have come up in some conversations today. Well, he didn't actually hit 400. We just rounded off to the closest number.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. We're going to wrap it up there for this show. Jack, we covered a lot of ground in baseball and covered a lot of years and a lot of topics. So I had a lot of fun with this conversation, and you'll see a couple more of these in the next couple of weeks, unless this is aired. This will probably go pretty soon. So I'm not going to worry about that. And Jack and I will be back with some more on the next date this show airs. Jack, thank you. We'll talk to you in a minute.